July 16, 2005. Charlton County, Georgia. A remote wooded area near the Florida state line. Police detectives stand around a shallow grave. They've just exhumed 2 bodies. The medical examiner kneels beside the remains, examining evidence that will confirm their worst suspicions. The victims are Carol and Reggie Sumner, both 61 years old, retired. They'd been missing for 8 days. The medical examiner finds sand deep in their throats, sand in their lungs, sand in their respiratory systems. The conclusion is inescapable. Carol and Reggie Sumner were buried alive. They suffocated slowly, breathing in dirt as the grave was filled above them. The person who led police to this grave is 18-year-old Bruce Nixon. He's cooperating with investigators. He's telling them everything. And the mastermind behind this unthinkable crime? A 23-year-old woman named Tiffany Cole. The Sumners treated her like a daughter. They trusted her. They helped her. And she buried them alive for their money. Before we dive into this nightmare, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We cover the darkest true crime stories from death row. Crimes so horrific, they're hard to believe. Every week, we bring you cases that haunt investigators for years. Now let's go back to how this nightmare began. Carol and Reggie Sumner were high school sweethearts in South Carolina. They graduated, went their separate ways, and lived entirely different lives for decades. Reggie joined the Navy and served his country. Carol married twice. Both marriages ended badly. Her second husband became physically abusive. She filed a restraining order, but he refused to let go. Carol's life was marked by struggle and survival. Then, decades after high school, Carol and Reggie reconnected. They fell in love all over again. In February 2001, they married. It was a second chance at happiness, a love story that survived decades of separation. By 2005, both are 61 years old and retired. Reggie is a Navy veteran, partially blind from diabetes. His health is declining rapidly. He uses a wheelchair, a cane, and adult diapers. He has a medical bracelet on his wrist. But his mind is sharp. Carol has liver cancer. She's undergoing chemotherapy. Her body is frail, weak. But she's devoted to Reggie. In March 2005, the Sumners moved from South Carolina to Jacksonville, Florida. Reggie had previously purchased a home there. They're looking forward to a peaceful retirement together. They sell their South Carolina property and make a significant profit, approximately $99,000. They have no children together, no immediate family nearby. They're just 2 people in love, trying to enjoy their final years together. And they're about to meet a young woman who will become like a daughter to them. Her name is Tiffany Cole. Tiffany Cole is born December 3, 1981, in Charleston, South Carolina. Her father, David Duncan, is in prison when she's born. Her mother, Shirley, raises Tiffany with help from her grandmother. When David is released from prison, the family reunites. But stability never comes. They move constantly. Tiffany's childhood is chaotic, unstable. When Tiffany is 5, her mother gives birth to a baby boy. Tiffany, at just 5 years old, becomes a caretaker for her younger brother. Her parents divorce. Tiffany spends her childhood shuttling between 2 homes. Her mother, Shirley, enters a relationship with a man named Rick, who becomes Tiffany's stepfather. When Tiffany is 12, Shirley gives birth to another boy. Tiffany now has 2 younger brothers to help raise. Despite the chaos, Tiffany is described as intelligent and capable. But she lacks direction, stability, a strong moral foundation. In 2005, when Tiffany is 23 years old, her father David is diagnosed with terminal cancer. Tiffany moves back in with him in South Carolina to care for him during his final months. It's during this time that the Sumners become part of her life. David Duncan lives next door to Carol and Reggie Sumner. The Sumners, kind and generous, befriend Tiffany. They help her care for her dying father. They treat her like family, like the daughter they never had. The Sumners even sell Tiffany their Chevrolet Lumina at a discount, allowing her to make small monthly payments. They trust her completely. June 2005. Tiffany Cole has a new boyfriend. His name is Michael James Jackson. He's 23 years old, a career criminal with a long history of violence and theft. They've only been together for 2 months, but Tiffany is infatuated. She introduces Michael to the Sumners during one of her trips to Jacksonville to make car payments. The Sumners, trusting and kind, welcome Michael into their home. They even let Tiffany and Michael stay with them overnight. During that visit, Carol and Reggie casually mention that they recently sold their South Carolina property for a significant profit, around $99,000. They're proud of their financial security. They see it as a nest egg for their retirement. Tiffany tells Michael about the money, and Michael begins planning. Michael Jackson is not just Tiffany's boyfriend. He's a manipulator, a predator, a man who sees people as resources to exploit. He sees the Sumners, frail, elderly, isolated, as easy targets. He pitches the idea to Tiffany: rob the Sumners, empty their bank accounts, take everything. Tiffany doesn't say no. Instead, she helps him recruit 2 other young men to assist with the crime. Alan Wade, 18 years old. Bruce Nixon, also 18. Both are looking for easy money. Both are willing to do whatever Michael tells them. Over the next few weeks, the 4 of them plan every detail. They'll kidnap the Sumners, force them to reveal their bank account information, and then they'll bury them alive. July 5, 2005. 2 days before the kidnapping, Michael Jackson, Alan Wade, Bruce Nixon, and Tiffany Cole drive to a remote wooded area in Charlton County, Georgia, just across the Florida state line. They're scouting the location, making sure it's isolated. No witnesses, no neighbors, no one to hear screams. They bring shovels. For hours they dig. Michael directs the operation. Alan and Bruce do most of the physical labor. And Tiffany? She holds the flashlight. She lights the way as they dig a grave for 2 people who are still alive. The hole is approximately 6 feet long, 4 feet wide, 3 feet deep. Big enough for 2 bodies. Deep enough that they won't be found easily. This isn't a spontaneous act of violence. This is premeditation. This is a death chamber dug 2 full days before the victims are even taken. When they finish, they cover the grave with branches and leaves. They mark the location so they can find it again in the dark. Then they drive back to South Carolina. The plan is set. In 2 days, they'll return to Jacksonville. They'll knock on the Sumners' door, and they'll set in motion one of the most horrific crimes in Florida history. Carol and Reggie Sumner have no idea what's coming. July 8, 2005. Evening. The Sumners' home in Jacksonville, Florida. Carol and Reggie are inside, enjoying a quiet evening. Reggie is in his wheelchair. Carol is resting. Her chemotherapy treatments leave her exhausted. There's a knock at the door. Alan Wade and Bruce Nixon stand outside. They're strangers to the Sumners, but they seem polite, harmless. They ask if they can use the phone. Their car broke down. They just need to make a quick call. The Sumners, kind and trusting, let them inside. The moment the door closes, everything changes. Bruce Nixon pulls out a fake gun, a BB gun that looks real enough to terrify. He points it at the Sumners. Alan Wade pulls out duct tape. Reggie, seated in his wheelchair, can't defend himself. Carol, frail from cancer, screams but has no strength to fight back. Alan Wade wraps duct tape around Reggie's wrists, ankles, and torso. He tapes Carol's hands and feet. He wraps tape around their mouths, gagging them. He blindfolds them both. The Sumners are helpless, terrified. Reggie's medical bracelet is still on his wrist. Carol's cancer medication is still on the kitchen counter. Outside, Tiffany Cole and Michael Jackson wait in a rented Mazda. They're the lookout team. If police approach, Tiffany and Michael will speed ahead and get pulled over, drawing attention away from the Lincoln Town car that now holds Carol and Reggie Sumner in the trunk. The Sumners are driven away from their home. They'll never see it again. Carol and Reggie Sumner are locked in the trunk of their own Lincoln Town car. Their hands and feet are bound with duct tape. Their mouths are gagged. They're blindfolded. They can't see where they're going. The drive from Jacksonville, Florida, to Charlton County, Georgia, takes approximately 2 hours. For 2 hours, Carol and Reggie lie in that dark trunk, breathing through their noses, terrified, wondering if they'll survive. Reggie's diabetes makes the situation even more dangerous. He needs medication, food, water. Carol's body, weakened by chemotherapy, struggles with every breath. But in that trunk, during those final hours, they do the only thing they can. They hold each other. Investigators will later confirm that Carol and Reggie embraced in the trunk. High school sweethearts. Reunited after decades. Married for just 4 years. Facing death together. Alan Wade drives the Lincoln. Bruce Nixon sits in the passenger seat. Behind them, Tiffany Cole and Michael Jackson follow in the Mazda. The convoy crosses state lines. Kidnapping becomes a federal crime. But the 4 perpetrators don't care about legal technicalities. They're focused on the plan. When they reach the remote wooded area in Georgia, they stop. Michael Jackson approaches the Lincoln. He opens a trunk. The Sumners, still bound and gagged, are forced out. They're barely able to stand. Reggie's legs buckle. Carol helps support him. And then they see it, the grave. Michael Jackson holds a yellow notepad and a pen. He demands the Sumners' bank account PIN codes. Carol and Reggie, terrified, have no choice. Michael removes the tape from their mouths long enough for them to speak. Reggie, his voice shaking, recites the 4-digit codes. Michael writes them down carefully. Carol confirms the numbers. The Sumners know what this means. They're giving away access to their life savings, the $99,000 from the sale of their South Carolina home. Everything they worked for. Their entire retirement fund. But they also understand something darker. Once Michael has the PIN codes, he doesn't need them alive anymore. Carol begs, "Please, let us go. We won't tell anyone. We promise. Just let us live." Reggie, despite his frailty, tries to reason with them. "You have the codes. You can take all the money. Just leave us here. We'll wait. We won't call the police." Michael Jackson doesn't respond. He's already made his decision. Alan Wade and Bruce Nixon stand near the grave. Tiffany Cole remains by the Mazda, parked on the road about 50 feet away. She's the lookout. She can see everything from where she stands. Michael signals to Alan and Bruce. They approach the Sumners. Still bound with duct tape, still blindfolded. Carol and Reggie are led to the edge of the grave. And then they're pushed in, alive. Carol and Reggie Sumner fall into the grave. The impact knocks the wind out of them. They're lying in dirt, still bound, still blindfolded. They can hear movement above them. And then the dirt starts falling. Michael Jackson and Alan Wade grab shovels. They begin filling the grave. Shovel after shovel of dirt rains down on Carol and Reggie. The couple tries to move, to roll away, but the duct tape restricts their movement. They try to scream, but the tape over their mouths muffles the sound. The dirt covers their legs, then their torsos, then their faces. Carol and Reggie Sumner are conscious. They're breathing. And with every breath, they inhale dirt. The medical examiner will later confirm that sand was found deep in their throats, deep in their lungs, deep in their respiratory systems. They didn't die instantly. They suffocated slowly, agonizingly, as dirt filled their mouths and noses. It takes minutes, maybe longer. The exact timeline is impossible to determine. But what is certain is this. Carol and Reggie Sumner died in unimaginable terror and pain. After the grave is filled, Michael, Allen, and Bruce cover it with branches and leaves. They smooth the dirt. They make it look like undisturbed forest floor. Bruce Nixon and Michael Jackson walk back to the Mazda, where Tiffany Cole is waiting. Alan Wade joins them. They drive away. Carol and Reggie Sumner's bodies lie buried in a shallow grave in Georgia, and the four people who killed them head back to Jacksonville to empty their bank accounts. July 9, 2005. The day after the murders. Michael Jackson uses the Sumner's ATM card to withdraw cash. Surveillance cameras capture him at multiple ATMs across Jacksonville. Tiffany Cole drives him in the Mazda, also caught on camera. Over the next several days, they withdraw thousands of dollars. They shop. They buy electronics. They stay at hotels. They act like they've won the lottery. Meanwhile, the Sumner's home sits empty. Their Lincoln Town car is missing. Their bank accounts are being drained. On July 10, 2005, Rhonda Strong, Carol's daughter from a previous marriage, reports her mother and stepfather missing. She's been calling them for days. No answer. She drives to their home. The door is unlocked. The house is eerily quiet. Personal belongings are missing: medications, identification, checkbooks. Rhonda contacts the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. Detective James Rowan takes the case. Within days, investigators notice large cash withdrawals from the Sumner's accounts. They pull ATM surveillance footage. They see Michael Jackson. They see Tiffany Cole driving him. Investigators also receive a strange phone call. Someone claiming to be James Reggie Sumner calls the bank, saying he's having trouble accessing his account. The voice doesn't sound right. Bank employees contact police. Detectives ask to speak to Mrs. Sumner. Tiffany Cole gets on the phone and pretends to be Carol, citing exhaustion from travel and her liver condition. Detective Meacham isn't convinced. Something is very wrong. This is where the investigation turns. But before we continue, if you're horrified by this case, hit that like button and drop a comment. What would you sentence Tiffany Cole to? Now, let's see how they were caught. July 15, 2005. 1 week after the murders. Detective James Rowan has enough evidence. He contacts the U.S. Marshals to assist with the arrest. They trace Michael Jackson's cell phone. The rental car's GPS places the Mazda near the Sumner's home on July 8th, the day they disappeared. Surveillance footage shows Michael Jackson at ATMs, withdrawing the Sumner's money. Tiffany Cole is visible in the driver's seat of the Mazda. Michael Jackson's fingerprints are found inside the Sumner's home. The U.S. Marshals track the four suspects to a Best Western hotel in South Carolina. They obtain a search warrant. On July 15, 2005, they arrest Michael Jackson, Tiffany Cole, Alan Wade, and Bruce Nixon. A search of their hotel rooms reveals the Sumner's IDs, credit cards, checkbooks, and personal documents. Michael Jackson has the Sumner's ATM card in his pocket. Alan Wade has their key ring. But there's no sign of Carol and Reggie Sumner. Detective Rowan interrogates Bruce Nixon. Nixon, the youngest and most scared, cracks under pressure. He agrees to cooperate, and he tells them where the bodies are buried. July 16, 2005. Bruce Nixon leads investigators to Charlton County, Georgia. They drive to the remote, wooded area. Nixon points to a spot on the ground. There, he says. Detectives begin excavating. Within hours, they uncover the remains of Carol and Reggie Sumner. The bodies are still bound with duct tape. The blindfolds are still in place. The couple is still embracing. The medical examiner, Dr. Anthony Clark, conducts autopsies. His findings are conclusive and horrifying. Carol and Reggie Sumner were buried alive. Sand is found deep in their throats and lungs. They suffocated as dirt filled their airways. Dr. Clark also notes the victims' physical conditions. Carol had liver cancer. Reggie was diabetic, partially blind, and used adult diapers. Both were in frail health. Neither had any ability to fight back or escape. The manner of death, Dr. Clark writes in his report, is wicked evil, indifferent to human suffering, painful, and vile. All 4 suspects are charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, kidnapping, and robbery. Because the victims were transported across state lines, federal charges are also filed. Bruce Nixon, who cooperated and led police to the bodies, will receive a plea deal. The other 3 will face trial. And Tiffany Cole will face the death penalty. October 2007. Duval County Courthouse, Jacksonville, Florida. Tiffany Cole's trial begins. Prosecutor Jay Plotkin presents a damning case. He argues that Tiffany Cole wasn't just a passive participant. She was the catalyst for the entire crime. While she may not have turned a shovel of dirt from the hole where the Sumners were left to die, she was certainly an instrument, and I would submit the catalyst, of why Reggie and Carol Sumner died. Plotkin tells the jury. Simply stated, these murders would not have happened but for Tiffany Cole. The evidence is overwhelming. Tiffany knew the Sumners. She was trusted by them. She told Michael Jackson about their money. She helped recruit Alan Wade and Bruce Nixon. She held the flashlight while they dug the grave 2 days before the murders. She was the lookout during the kidnapping. She drove Michael Jackson to ATMs to withdraw the victim's money. She posed as Carol Sumner on the phone to investigators. Plotkin emphasizes the premeditation. Carol and Reggie Sumner are now in a grave, but in July 2005, they were not put in a grave. They were put in a death chamber, a hole, a pit in southern Georgia, which was this defendant's murder weapon. The prosecution presents autopsy photos, surveillance footage, phone records, witness testimony from Bruce Nixon, who describes in graphic detail how the Sumners were buried alive. The jury is visibly disturbed. Some jurors cry as they hear the details of the Sumners' final moments. Tiffany Cole's defense attorney argues that while Tiffany was involved, she did not play a direct role in the actual kidnapping or burial. Though vilified in the media and by prosecutors during trial, she never entered the Sumners' home the night they died, nor did she bind and gag them, stuff them in a trunk, drive them out in the woods, and bury them alive, the defense argues. Michael Jackson, Alan Wade, and Bruce Nixon did these acts. However, it is also true that Tiffany Cole shamefully did nothing to stop them. The defense presents Tiffany's difficult childhood, her father in prison, her chaotic upbringing, her role as a caretaker for her younger siblings from age 5. They argue she was manipulated by Michael Jackson, a career criminal. But the prosecution counters. What evidence is there that she was dragged kicking and screaming into the dark night of crime by Michael Jackson? The only people dragged into the night of the crime were the people killed in that hole. The defense also points out that Tiffany was only 23 years old at the time, that she had no prior violent criminal history. But the jury doesn't buy it. Tiffany Cole knew exactly what she was doing. She helped plan it. She participated. She showed no remorse. On October 24, 2007, after deliberating for several hours, the jury finds Tiffany Cole guilty on all counts. 2 counts of first-degree murder, 2 counts of kidnapping, 2 counts of robbery. Now comes the penalty phase, life or death. The jury hears victim impact statements. Rhonda Strong, Carol's daughter, describes the agony of losing her mother in such a horrific way. Family members described Carol and Reggie as kind, loving, generous people who helped everyone they met. The prosecution argues for death. They emphasize the heinousness of the crime. Carol and Reggie were buried alive. They suffocated slowly, in terror, unable to move or scream. The crime was premeditated. The grave was dug 2 days in advance. And it was motivated purely by greed. The defense pleads for life. They remind the jury of Tiffany's age, her lack of prior violence, her troubled childhood. The jury deliberates. On March 6, 2008, the jury recommends the death penalty by a vote of 9-3. Under Florida law at the time, a simple majority is sufficient. The judge accepts the recommendation. Tiffany Cole is formally sentenced to death by lethal injection. At 26 years old, Tiffany Cole becomes the 3rd youngest woman on death row in the United States. She's transferred to Lowell Correctional Institution in Marion County, Florida, the same facility that houses Amelia Carr. Michael Jackson and Alan Wade also received death sentences. Bruce Nixon, who cooperated with investigators, is sentenced to 45 years in prison. Tiffany Cole will spend the next 15 years on death row. 2008 to 2023. Tiffany Cole spends 15 years on death row at Lowell Correctional Institution. Her life is confined to a small cell. 23 hours a day in isolation. 1 hour of recreation in a cage. No physical contact with visitors, only conversations through glass. Constant surveillance. Harsh fluorescent lights. The knowledge that the state of Florida plans to execute her. She files appeals. She argues ineffective assistance of counsel. She claims her role in the crime was minimal compared to her male co-defendants. She emphasizes her age at the time, just 23 years old. Every appeal is denied. But then, in January 2016, the U.S. Supreme Court issues the Hurst v. Florida ruling. Death sentences must be based on unanimous jury recommendations, not simple majorities. Tiffany's jury had voted 9-3 for death. Under the new ruling, that sentence is unconstitutional. Her case is sent back for resentencing. But by the time her resentencing hearing occurs, Florida law has changed again. Now, juries can sentence someone to death with just an 8-4 vote. Tiffany's resentencing trial is scheduled for August 2023. Prosecutors argue for death again. The defense argues for life. And the Sumner's family must relive the nightmare all over again. August 2023. Nearly 18 years after the murders. Tiffany Cole, now 41 years old, sits in the courtroom. Her appearance has changed dramatically. The young woman who helped bury Carol and Reggie Sumner is now middle-aged, worn by years of incarceration. Prosecutor Jay Plotkin makes the same arguments. The crime was heinous, premeditated, unforgivable. Tiffany held the flashlight as they dug the grave. She was the catalyst. She deserves death. But Tiffany's defense attorney, Julie Schlacks, presents a different narrative. She argues that Tiffany has changed, that she's been a model inmate, that she's mentored other women in prison, that she's more than the worst thing she did at 23 years old. Does it excuse it? Of course not, Schlacks tells the jury. None of us will ever forget what happened to the Sumners in 2005. And nor should we. Tiffany Cole won't forget either. There will not be a day of her life that she spends behind bars, not thinking about what occurred in 2005 and what led her to be a part of that. But Tiffany Cole is so much more than that. And she actually has the ability to contribute. We ask you not to judge her solely for her actions of 2005. Schlacks notes that Cole will die in prison regardless. Life without parole is a sufficient punishment. The jury deliberates. August 23, 2023. The jury votes 10-2 in favor of life without parole. Tiffany Cole will not be executed. She'll spend the rest of her life in prison, but the state will not take her life. The courtroom is silent. Then something remarkable happens. The Sumner's niece stands and addresses Tiffany directly. Tiffany, I just want to say I forgive you. I truly forgive you. Reverend Jean Clark, Reggie Sumner's sister, echoes the sentiment. We forgive you. It's a stunning moment. After 18 years of pain, anger, and grief, the victim's family chooses forgiveness over vengeance. Tiffany Cole breaks down in tears. For prosecutors, it's a disappointing outcome. They argued for death. They believed Tiffany deserved the ultimate punishment. But the jury disagreed. For the defense, it's a victory. Tiffany will never be free, but she'll live. For the Sumner's family, it's complicated. Some feel justice has been served. Others feel the sentence is too lenient for such a horrific crime. For Tiffany Cole, it's a second chance, not at freedom, but at life. She'll grow old in prison. She'll die in prison, but she won't be executed. Her co-defendant Michael Jackson was resentenced to death in May 2023. Alan Wade was resentenced to life in 2022. Bruce Nixon remains in prison, serving his 45-year sentence. Tiffany Cole is now 42 years old. She's incarcerated at Lowell Correctional Institution in Ocala, Florida. She will never be released. Life without parole means she'll die in prison, whether from old age, illness, or prison violence. She's no longer on death row, but she's still in one of Florida's harshest women's prisons. Lowell has a reputation for violence, overcrowding, and inadequate medical care. Tiffany's family visits occasionally, but most of her old life is gone. Friends have moved on. Her younger brothers have grown up. Her father died years ago. She spends her days in the general prison population. She works prison jobs. She participates in religious programs. She's described by prison officials as a model inmate. But the shadow of what she did in 2005 will follow her forever. Michael Jackson remains on death row, awaiting execution. Alan Wade is serving life at another Florida prison. Bruce Nixon, who cooperated, will be eligible for release in the 2040s. And Carol and Reggie Sumner? They've been dead for 19 years. They never got to enjoy their retirement. They never got to grow old together. They died in terror, buried alive, betrayed by someone they trusted. Tiffany Cole says she thinks about them every day. Whether that's true, only she knows. The case of Tiffany Cole and the Sumners forces us to confront the darkest questions about human nature. How does a 23-year-old woman help bury two elderly people alive? Carol and Reggie treated Tiffany like family. They trusted her. They helped her. And she repaid that kindness by participating in their murder. Was Tiffany manipulated by Michael Jackson, or was she a willing participant? The prosecution argued she was the catalyst. The murders wouldn't have happened without her. The defense argued she was a follower, not a leader. Does her age matter? At 23, is someone fully developed morally? Does youth excuse participation in one of the most horrific crimes imaginable? And what about forgiveness? The Sumners family chose to forgive Tiffany. Does that make her sentence more just or less? Should victims' families have a say in whether someone lives or dies? These questions don't have easy answers. What we know for certain is this. On July 8, 2005, Carol and Reggie Sumner were kidnapped from their home, forced to reveal their bank account information, driven to Georgia, and buried alive in a shallow grave. They suffocated slowly, in terror, holding each other in their final moments. Tiffany Cole will spend the rest of her life in prison for her role in those murders. She's alive. Carol and Reggie Sumner are not. And that's the brutal, haunting reality of this case. Justice was served, but nothing can bring back the Sumners. That's the horrifying true story of Tiffany Cole, who helped bury Carol and Reggie Sumner alive and became one of the youngest women on death row. If this case made you think, hit that subscribe button because we cover death row cases like this every week. Stories that are shocking, complex, and tragically real. Drop a comment. Was life without parole the right sentence, or should Tiffany Cole have been executed? Check out our other video on Amelia Carr, the youngest woman on death row. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.